Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health TV and radio show. I'm your host, SARA BANTA. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of three. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you're notified every week with my new podcasts on Mondays and Tuesdays. And if you haven't already, join the free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. There is no downside. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health, and you will be a part of an amazing like-minded group to support you on your journey in addition to truly taking control of your health. My goal is to reach everyone on earth with eyes to see and ears to hear my message of healing. So help me with that goal. Share this podcast with a few of your friends who may need my help. This week, today, and tomorrow, I will be talking about mitochondrial health with my guests. And today we have one of your favorite guests back, Heather Hiniker. How are you, Heather?
Hi, Sarah. I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. And today we're going to be talking about the connection between cellular voltage and mitochondrial health. And I always say that, people have tried the paleo diet, the keto diet, the vegan diet, but they are now going to be starting to talk about the mitochondrial diet because really it is about mitochondria. And as you age, your mitochondrial function may decrease as this is linked to is linked directly to aging and most chronic diseases. So if you stop mitochondrial demise, you stop aging essentially. And aging itself is a chronic disease and increases the risk of most other chronic diseases. And as you improve your mitochondrial function in the cells, aging halts or reverses, leading to this reversal of most chronic diseases. And I know, Heather, you and I both have witnessed over the last 3 years people declining significantly and at an accelerated rate. And people who had chronic issues that were in remission all of a sudden are flaring back up. So we're going to get into why and what's causing this, how to reverse it, and where does cellular voltage come in? So why don't we start with what are mitochondria?
Okay, one of my favorite subjects. Most of us know what they are, but I'm just going to go into a quick little explanation. So you think our human bodies, like on average, have 37 trillion cells. Like that's a huge number to wrap your head around. And within those cells are these little organelles called mitochondria. And basically, each cell, depending on what type of cell it is, so like if it's, say muscle or brain, have these mitochondria. Muscle, brain, liver, kidneys actually have the highest concentration of mitochondria. And each of these trillions of cells can have anywhere from 1,000 to 2,500 mitochondria in each cell. These mitochondria are actually the batteries to the cells, and they are producing our energy that we need for every function, every process our body goes through. It's called ATP. Adenosine triphosphate is the long word. Today, we're just going to be saying ATP. And this is the currency that we need, again, for every single process that our body goes through. Mitochondrial function when we're young should be performing optimally, right? This is how we're growing, building our systems. When we get hurt, we heal super fast. And then again, like you said, one of the mechanisms of aging is this dysfunction or, lack of response of the mitochondria. So we'll go in today. I actually just got back from Texas about a week ago. I was with Dr. Jerry Tennant, who wrote the book on Healing is Voltage. And I learned so much about cellular functioning and cellular health in correlation to what our voltage is at. And as I was kind of preparing for this podcast today, there's not much online. I don't think people really think about the correlation of mitochondria, cellular permeability, or what we call phase angle, and then also the voltage. But as I was kind of looking at everything, I saw some true synergies, and why, raising our voltage and making sure that our permeability factor is at its most optimal has a direct correlation with mitochondria.
Absolutely. So quickly, I want to touch on what's causing the decline in mitochondria. Things that people won't realize. I love the word that you use, currency, because people drink their coffee. And it was funny. My daughter flew home got in at LAX at midnight, had to go to school Monday morning, and she came home from school. And I saw her in her car just sitting there for like 20 minutes. I'm like, are you going to get out of your car? She goes, Mom, not enough caffeine, and caffeine's not even working. And I go, well, yeah, because you're stealing. It is a currency. So it's like a bank. If you take money out of the bank, you're going to have to pay at some point, right? The credit card's going to build up and that interest rate is going to keep going up. So ways of getting energy that is borrowed energy, like caffeine, or trying to eat more and maybe eating more of these processed foods that actually steal ATP from the body, that's not going to get you there. You've got to build that energy from the inside out and increase the ATP in the mitochondria. So what declines mitochondria? Emotional stress. Short term, not a big deal. But even within a short period of time, emotional stress can wipe out that mitochondria. You might feel like during this stressful moment, you have this burst of energy because you're on your adrenals are just pumping you up. But then you might notice that the next day you're wiped out, like physically, mentally, emotionally. It can actually increase blood sugar without any influence from food. It increases inflammation, lowers ATP production, and produces oxidative stress. That's all what emotional stress will do. The processed foods, like I mentioned, this is so interesting. People will be tired, eat food, processed food, thinking they're trying to get energy, but that processed food is actually stealing ATP from the body. So you're actually losing energy every time you're eating this. And the processed foods create more waste that make mitochondrial biogenesis stop. And there's more waste for the body to clean up. And this is going to slow down the whole system, decrease that mitochondrial biogenesis. Most people today, suboptimal thyroid, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's. The thyroid affects mitochondria in 4 to 5 different ways. It's critical for mitochondrial function. The resting metabolic rate, which is how much energy your cells are producing when you're not doing anything, is almost entirely determined by thyroid hormone. And the thyroid hormone activates something referred to as uncoupling protein 3, which is an uncoupling receptor on the mitochondria that stops mitochondria from self-destructing. That's why the thyroid prevents self-destruction of mitochondria, stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, and stimulates mitochondrial division. So then the thyroid is essential also for the fatty acid metabolism of mitochondria. Then we look into toxicity. We are loaded with the heavy metal toxicity, the radiation, and I go over and over and over this. We are not living in a generation that our parents did. Our parents were eating whole foods. They didn't have processed foods. They did not have fluoride and chlorine and bromide as much as we do in all of our food and water. They do not have the GMOs and the glyphosates. All of that stuff suppresses mitochondrial health, halts the ATP production, suppresses thyroid function, overloads the liver, which can inhibit its detoxification pathways, and triggers systemic inflammation. So I wanted to just mention all of those things because you're sitting here going, well, we didn't need these devices and patches and supplements that Sarah and Heather are talking about 10 years ago. We didn't even need them 3 years ago as much as we do now. I mean, with what they're doing to the food supply, even the healthy foods, and I can go through my own experience over the weekend and touch on this, is what's going on in my body, and I'm doing all the things right. But first, let's get into some of the basics of the definitions of what is phase angle, what is cellular voltage, what does all of this mean?
Okay, awesome. So is there an echo? Because I hear an echo. Is it okay?
I hear an echo too.
Is it better now? I think it is.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, as I was like going through this, and trying to, there's so much online, so much information, but some of the things I learned today, I'm going to read because there's a lot of numbers here that I had no idea. And I think it's relevant for what we're talking about today. So most of or a large amount of our ATP is produced by mitochondria every single second. Okay. And ATP cannot be stored. So that's an important thing to remember. So if our mitochondria are not functioning at good or optimal levels, that's where ATP isn't going to be produced because it can't be stored. So the average cell uses 10 billion ATP a day. I know that's a huge number. And again, our body cannot store the ATP. So at any given time, there's about 250 grams of ATP in our cells. This represents about 4.25 watts, which is equivalent to like a AA battery. Okay. And this is where we're getting into that voltage component. So I really wanted to touch on this. So every day, a healthy person produces a remarkable 1,200 watts. That's a lot of energy that we each produce every single day. Our brain actually uses 70% of the ATP that we're producing. So you can see if you're not producing the ATP the way you should, this is why degenerative, things like dementia and Alzheimer's and neurological issues happen, coupled with what you just touched on when we're being exposed to these crazy EMFs, the 5G that's constantly going up and getting higher and higher. And what we're breathing, what we're drinking, what we're eating, it makes it really hard for our bodies to do what they're supposed to do. So the ATP is basically, like we talked about, the currency or the energy that the mitochondria are producing. But around all of those, so you think again, 1,000 to 2,500 mitochondria in the cells. When we're talking about a cell, each of these cells, these 37 trillion cells, have a membrane or a wall around them, okay? And when we're babies, this membrane is super permeable. The voltage that can be measured around each membrane is probably 25 to 30 millivolts, and we'll go into the millivolts here in a second. That is having a direct correlation of what's getting into the cells and what's able to get out of the cells. So there's three contributing factors to aging, to disease, any chronic diagnosis. And one of them is for the cells to be able to intake nutrients. So any of the supplements we're taking, the food we're eating that's good for us, the cells actually have to be able to take that in, and the permeability or the membrane around the cells need to allow for that. So that's one contributing factor. The second is the disposal of waste and toxins. So, because we're being bombarded with so much waste, so many toxins, if our cell walls aren't able to get rid of that, and then our body does its thing to help get it out of, that works with the lymphatic system to help rid it from our system, it's going to start compiling. And we've talked about this. As waste and toxins compile on a cellular level and get trapped in the cells, it does turn into systemic inflammation. We know inflammation is basically the root of every disease or pain state. So good stuff getting in, bad stuff getting out. And then the third contributing factor is cellular voltage. So most of us are very lucky if we walk around at 20 to 25 millivolts. That would be considered a healthy human being. The second the millivolt, the measurement starts going below that 20 mark, it's a red flag. And I'm actually talking about overall. So we just got back from, like I said, Dr. Tennant's, and here we have a technology that we're really working on increasing the cellular voltage. I'll go into that in a second. But there's also a diagnostic or an analyzer that will tell us what we are at our baseline. And it's not like the InBody 770 that we've touched on before that's measuring the permeability factor or the phase angle of each cell. It's actually measuring the voltage of each cell. And so I work with a center down the way that also has this analysis. And what they see is, on average, so taking into account all the cells in the body, when someone has a diagnosis like cancer, they might be at 2 to 3 millivolts. And millivolts, when you look at it, it's minus millivolts, right? To be optimal, you want 20 to 25. And so when I got mine measured before I had this device in here and was using it regularly, I was at 18 millivolts, which the practitioner is like, that's actually way better than I see most people. But in my head, I'm like, kidding me? Like, I need to be, all the stuff I do, I want to be at least 25 millivolts. And so she's like, well, let's do the recharge, and I'll explain to you what this is and here in a second, for a few months and see what happens. And so I was consistent. I did the biomodulator with the recharge of the hand and foot plates twice a week for 30 minutes each time, and we reassessed, and I was at 30, or actually, I'll be precise, I was 28.9 millivolts,
Wow.
which was one of the highest that they've ever seen. And so I'm happy with that. In order for cells to completely regenerate and grow new cells, they need to be at 50 millivolts. Now, your entire body is never going to be at 50 millivolts. So that's what I said to myself. Well, I want to be at 50. It doesn't exist. Even when you're a baby, when you take the measurements, it's the entirety of everything, right? And then you also have to think the cells with more mitochondria, like muscles, brain, liver, kidneys, they're actually going to be at a higher millivolt. So it's really the average that we're talking about today. When we're dealing with people that have, so say you're measuring the millivolts in abnormal cells, right? Abnormal cell growth, you can tell what I'm saying. In order for that to occur, it's probably at plus 20 to 30 millivolts, okay? But that's in that specific area. That's not particularly the entire body. But it does bring down the average of the entire body. That's why people who have diagnoses are, they're at the 2, 4, 6 of the millivolts. So it just super, super interesting to me, because in talking with Dr. Tennant, I'm like, when we're quantifying things and people are coming in, I actually really give a lot of weight to that phase angle measurement. I feel like it's a great indicator of health, that cellular permeability. He's like, absolutely. And there's correlations with that and the voltage. I'm supposed to be getting some information from him that it's like a chart that breaks everything down. So, and also in regards to acidic, like pH levels in the body, they all go hand in hand, because if everything isn't functioning at those optimal levels, this is when people are getting different diagnoses.
Right. And what's interesting is people think that these diseased cells are the strong, powerful cells in the body, and they're not. It's just that your body's so weak and it doesn't have a strong immune system or energy to it to fight what it's going after. So we touched on, I wanted to just touch on the phase angle. I had this conversation with a friend of mine this weekend who's gone from a vegan diet to starting to eat meat again because she's extremely anemic. And she said her anemia is getting worse. And I said, well, you're eating grains and lectins and sulfur and oxalates that are ripping up your gut, and you're not absorbing what you need. Mm-hmm. So it's not all about what you eat. It's about what you're not eating. And then it's also about healing your gut. So you're actually absorbing the nutrients, but then your phase angle. So you're actually getting the nutrients into the cells. It's all of these things. And it's not just eat one good meal and then, go to fast food and think that you're doing all these things and you should be healthy. It's unfortunate, you guys, that we're in this position where we've got to continue doing all of these things to stay healthy. We are salmon swimming upstream, unfortunately. But Heather, so you touched on phase angle, but why don't you dive into that a little more before we then get into the technologies?
Sure. So out of the trillions of cells that we have, every single one of them has a wall or a membrane around it. When we are functioning optimally, and usually that's when you are a child, because that's where you're growing and everything's firing at all cylinders, your phase angle number is probably at its highest. It's probably in the double digits. And all that means is that all the good stuff, the nutrients, the oxygen is getting into the cells. And then as you know, you're exposed to different toxins, if you will, or traumas, you know, the waste associated with that, the metabolic waste associated with that, the cells, if the membrane's great, it should just go out the membrane, and then the, you know, capillary system is going to help filter it out into the lymphatic system, and it'll get out of the body. But what happens when your cellular membrane starts to become more hardened and rigid, the good stuff can't get in and the bad stuff can't get out. And so by trying to increase that phase angle number, that permeability of the cell walls, now your body is able to combat the waste and toxins from accumulating and turning into that systemic inflammation. Women, you know, usually average, and women, you know, 18 years and above, usually average between a phase angle of 4 and 6 on our particular device. Men usually average phase angle to 5 to 7. And, you know, I think we touched on this a while ago. I've had the bioimpedance analyzer for about, gosh, I think 6 years now. When I first measured my phase angle, I had already had this business for a while, so I was anticipating a good number. Women usually average between 4 and 6. I was at a 5.8, so I was on the high side of average. That made me happy. And then fast forward, the phase angle is only supposed to go down with age. If we are able to get it to regulate and stop going down, that's a plus. We basically have halted the aging process. It's when we're able to manipulate it to go up with things that you're exposing yourself to, what you're putting in your body, different frequencies, that is actually reversing, that cellular age reversal. And that's what we want to see. So fast forward, I average around 6.3 on my phase angle, and I'm getting older, right? But, you know, I see the difference on my skin, my hair. You know, typically those are markers that people look at to see how old someone is. And constantly, because my cellular integrity and my phase angle is going up, it's reflecting on the outside as well. So it's a huge contributing factor for sure. And then it does have a direct correlation with how the mitochondria are functioning, because they rely on the good nutrients and oxygen the mitochondria do to produce ATP. So if that can't even get in the cell, they can't produce ATP. And so the first thing is to optimize that and then increase the cellular voltage. And then the cells are smart. Our body is super, super innately intelligent. It knows how to regulate and perform at its best. It's just we have to start at that very cellular level.
Amazing. Okay, so what can we do to boost the mitochondria and ATP production? What are the supplements or the technologies? We'll go through technologies, and then we'll get into supplements and diet and other lifestyle hacks.
Okay, so just like at our facility in Newport, Ascent Adaptation Regeneration, we have 13 different modalities. The ones that really, I would say, focus or have a direct correlation with mitochondria are first and foremost our CVAC pods. You know, the CVAC pods, there's only about 70 in the world, only 20 something open to the public, and they do induce mitochondrial biogenesis. So, and they're also inducing endogenous stem cell production, more red blood cells, which is more oxygen. As far as a technology that is reverse aging at a cellular level, there is not much that compares to what the CVAC is doing. Another one is that we're both familiar with, Sarah, is the biocharger. There's recipes specific to energy production, specific to telomeres. And so that's, and the biocharger is also increasing the voltage. It's also increasing the permeability factor via PEMF. So all of these things contribute. We had a whole episode on PEMF a while back, which is pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. And we understand why it's so important, because most of us are not walking around barefoot on the earth anymore. Even if we can do it for 20 minutes a day, it's not what our ancestors were doing. And so we need these technologies to help mitigate what we're not being exposed to as much as we need what we are being exposed to. The voltage component. So the biocharger will increase the voltage to some extent, but I have had the biocharger for a couple years now. And when I initially got my meat analysis done to tell me what my voltage was, I was at 18. And again, everyone thought that was great, but that was not great in my eyes. It wasn't until I started to do the Tenant biomodulator. There's two different parts to it. There's one that you prepare the body with scalar energy, which you're super familiar with because all your amazing products use that. But it's basically flipping or repolarizing the body. So the first thing that really happens is our polarities get out of whack. And so you kind of think of us as a flashlight, right? And then inside we have batteries. If you take one of those batteries out of that flashlight and flip it and try to turn it on, it's not going to turn on. The same thing happens with our energy points, meridians, whatever you want to call them. The polarities of those get flipped. And so you want to flip those back to where they're supposed to be. And the Tenant transducer does that. And then after that, we basically use the biomodulator. It emits certain frequencies. And there's different ones. We have the one that's the Pro that has like 60 different settings. But when you're doing 30 minutes and you're holding electrodes in your hands and holding electrodes in your feet, and basically you can feel the charge. It is going through your entire system and circulating this voltage. And it just, most of our clients, when they're coming in and they really want to work on their voltage, they're doing it, 2 times a week. I try to do it 3 times a week, and that's how I was able to get mine up over 12 points in 3 months. I'm going to do another analysis to see where I'm at. I'm probably doing it only 2 times a week right now, but I don't think I'm going to go much higher than that, simply because it's not really optimal. Your cells are at that high frequency or high voltage state, 50 millivolts plus, when they're trying to regenerate and heal itself. I don't think you want every single cell at that all the time, because you should come to a place of homeostasis where your body's regulated and functioning optimally.
So over that period of time, it's great to see it on the number on the paper that you've increased. Did you feel a difference?
I did. During that period of time, this was before I got COVID. I got COVID in August. And so it was before COVID and everything. I was actually feeling like my best self. And then I got COVID, and this will be a whole nother episode. The spike protein pretty much wreaked havoc on my cell receptors. And, long story short, everything's good now, but it took me a while to figure it out because Western medicine doesn't talk about the spike protein like they should. So we'll stop there. But I will say, as far as ATP production, we have specific technologies that work on that. One is you do it at least once a week. I do it at least once a week. And that's our red light bed. So our particular bed is a class 2 medical device, and most red light out there is going to give you benefit. Most of it, depending on which wavelengths of light, like the 630 to the 660, are going to be increasing collagen, elastin, evening skin tone, which is awesome, but that's not why we got the bed that we have. Our bed actually emits 4 wavelengths of light, more of a near infrared and infrared that goes deeper into the cellular level to help initiate a production of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a molecule that's needed to produce ATP. And so as we age, this is just another component, if you will, that tends to lessen, lessen, lessen. By the time we're 50 years old, and we're both almost there, Sarah, we're only producing 15 to 25% of the nitric oxide needed for that optimal level of ATP production. And this bed, doing it once a week, will actually increase those levels to the full tank. And one treatment lasts 4 to 6 days of that full tank.
Which is amazing. I'm having an expert come on in a couple weeks about nitric oxide, and he's going to be talking about the fact that people take these nitric oxide supplements that are a waste of money. They don't work. And so this is one true way that you can actually increase your nitric oxide in a healthy way. And Heather, we may be chronologically approaching 50, but I'm sworn that I'm never going to reach that number biologically. So there we go. I said it on camera and it's recorded. And I want to touch on my experience over this last weekend was that I was suffering from bloat, water retention, headache, and I tested positive for E. coli. But I also tested positive for being exposed to the spike protein. Did I get COVID? No. I did all my things, but all the technologies and everything. What I noticed was number one, the acceleradine iodine, which increases ATP by 18 times. So taking a supplement increases it by 18 times. It is also helpful in reversing the damage done by the spike protein. I took that. I took my accelerated copper, and we're going to go through the supplements in a minute. But I want to just tell you what I did over the weekend because I'm back to normal today. The accelerated copper, the spike protein depletes your copper levels, right? So we need our copper for energy. People think we get energy from iron and you're anemic because of a lack of iron. You're actually anemic because the iron in your body is not where it needs to go. The copper is that key that opens the door to get the iron to where it needs to go. I also realized that because of these two things that I'm fat malabsorbed. What does that mean? That means that I cannot break down fat very well. So me eating a big healthy dinner of salmon was actually the wrong thing because too much fat was backing up my liver and making me work too hard. And everything in my body was suffering. My ATP had come down. So adding in the supplements, sticking to a leaner meals, intermittent fasting, and then tonight I will be doing my liver flush because that is going to be flushing out everything to help the liver regenerate, clean out, get a reset, increase that ATP, increase the thyroid hormones, and work the way they're supposed to work. Now, to add into all of that, it was a full moon. So you've got to also remember, put this on your calendar, everybody, full moons and new moons, they bring out parasites. What do parasites like to play with? They like to play with viruses. So if you're just a little sick before the full moon, it might hit you a little harder, or you might be more constipated, or you might be more bloated or retaining more water. All of those things are going to get worse during those times. So just certain things to be aware of. Okay, so when you are having people come into the office, what do you see? And you do the scans and you see their phase angles, or their voltage is low. What types of things do you notice about these people? What is common in their diet, their lifestyle, their physical attributes? What are you noticing as examples of good mitochondrial health and poor?
So what I know is right off the bat, when anyone walks through the door, is their skin. I feel like the skin is a true reflection of what's going on inside. And a lot of times when people have a very low phase angle, they have a gray tint about them. You cannot see any rosiness. And so that's a big use. Like I can basically see someone and know that they're going to be below average on the phase angle 9 out of 10 times when their skin looks compromised as far as color goes. They complain about fatigue. A lot of them complain about fatigue. They usually always have some kind of pain state or chronic pain going on. And then they have issues sleeping. Sleep, I think a lot of us take it for granted when we sleep well. But when you get in that vicious cycle and you have a lot of inflammation and certain diagnoses, sleep is usually a contributing factor, but it's also something that, like when my rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis was at its worst, when I was 34 years old, I couldn't sleep because the pain was so bad. So I was waking up, I felt like every 20 minutes to toss and turn. And every time I'd turn, I'd get a shooting pain somewhere, and I didn't have good quality sleep. Well, you need sleep in order to repair and regenerate. And so it becomes that catch-22. So I definitely feel like people with compromised phase angle are not sleeping, and then they have low muscle mass. We've touched on this because mitochondria, are high density in muscle cells. same thing with phase angle. Typically, when someone has a higher phase angle measurement, they have an adequate amount of muscle. You'll see people that come in and, there's different charts on the in-body analysis, and we don't ever want their skeletal muscle mass line basically to be less than the total weight and the fat line. And I would say a good 60 to 70% of people are. And they also have compromised phase angles. So those are some of the common things that I see for sure.
The muscle mass is huge, and it's really difficult to maintain your muscle mass as you get older. So you younger people, take advantage of your nice genes in youth and build that really good muscle to carry you through the rest of your life. It is directly correlated with longevity. And I work hard at my muscle, and it's hard. And now at 48, it's a lot harder than it was when I was 30 years old.
You have such a good balance, though, Sarah, as far as when you come in. I mean, your muscle is above average slightly in a good way. So you're doing all the stuff.
Thank you. So how would the Beamer fit in with the mitochondrial health? And you mentioned circulation. I'm sure that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, so the Beamer is so unique in that it's increasing blood flow within our capillaries. And then it's also, because it's classified a PEMF device, the first thing that PEMF does is it allows our cells to repel each other. When typically blood flow slows down, the cells begin to stick on each other. And as they start to accumulate waste and toxins, no matter how permeable the cell walls are, will get trapped because they're all bunched and stacked together. So the first component of Beamer is going to allow the cells to separate. And then what Beamer does that no other PEMF device does, and it's been proven to increase blood flow via the vasomotion. So just real quick, our capillaries actually have their own pump. Our capillaries make up 3/4 of our circulatory system, and they are not reliant on our heart pumping blood through them. This pump is called vasomotion. When we're in our prime, we probably have 4 to 6 vasomotion occurrences in 1 minute. As we get older, if there's a diagnosis of something like diabetes, you might only have 1 pump in 4 minutes. What Beamer does that no other device or pill does is increase that instance. And because we're within the capillaries, so that network, that's where your cells are actually exchanging nutrients. That's where they're disposing of waste. That's where hormones are being exchanged. So if you're optimizing the cellular function within, by having them separated and the blood flow increasing, oxygenation levels increasing by 30%, it's going to have a direct correlation to how your cells function, and then have a direct correlation on the mitochondria.
Amazing. Well, right now I'm going to go into a couple supplements that really enhance mitochondrial health, just the top ones in order of priority. Accelerated keto, and people think, oh, this is just a ketone supplement. That's not the case. When your body is running on ketones combined with a lower carb whole food diet, ATP production increases significantly in the mitochondria, and the mitochondrial biogenesis is optimized. But the additional ingredients in it break down saturated fats into unsaturated fats in the liver, which is breaking down liver fat, which 45% of adults actually have fatty liver, which is crazy. 25% of children have fatty liver, and this is all due to processed foods, which lower ATP when you eat them. So now we were getting on to how do we flip that switch. We get on the accelerated keto, we intermittent fast, which both of those are going to trigger autophagy and apoptosis. Autophagy is the cleaning up of diseased and damaged cells. Apoptosis is programmed death of diseased cells. So we want to get rid of those. These unsaturated fats that the keto turns the saturated fats into are easier for the body to utilize and convert into ketones. So when you're exercising, the body fat's more readily available to burn for energy, which increases ketones, increases ATP. All of them stack again on top of each other. And the accelerated keto is defatting the liver. It's also increasing the thyroid hormones because your liver is where your thyroid hormones turn from inactive into active, T4 into T3. So as the liver's functioning better, the thyroid's working better, which is increasing metabolism, mitochondrial function, and your energy. So now you have the energy to go out and do more, which is only going to increase your ATP even more. And then I mentioned before the acceleradine. So sufficient iodine in all tissues, all cells, and Heather mentioned 37 trillion. I've mentioned 100 trillion cells in the human body. Really, no one knows how many cells we have. We've got a lot of cells, but it will increase your ATP to 36 through the Krebs cycle compared to only 2 when the body is deficient in iodine, and 96% of the population is deficient in iodine. So this is huge for all levels of function, including your brain, physical performance, wound healing, fat burning, and that amazing thing called apoptosis that I mentioned before. And when you increase that ATP, energy and fat oxidation increase. And it also is going to help with your metabolism, physical energy, by supplying the necessary iodine for thyroid hormones. And the thyroid as that is functioning better, then ATP is maximized and your mitochondria is maximized. I mentioned the copper. By boosting the production of red blood cells, copper prevents the development of anemia, which is one of the main reasons for fatigue and poor mitochondrial health. Many times, as I mentioned, anemia or fatigue are connected to low iron. I had this conversation with someone yesterday about it. It's not the iron, guys. We actually have too much iron in our body because they put iron filings in our food, which is so wrong. Think about your rusting from the inside out. The iron's in the wrong places. So copper is the gatekeeper, allowing the iron to get to where it needs to go. A lack of copper is also why people are experiencing this unexplained weight gain, because of copper depletion from, number 1, the spike protein, and number 2, consumption of processed foods. Those 2 things deplete copper at an accelerated rate, independent of each other. Mm-hmm. So now we are so copper deficient that there's iron building up in our cells, which I actually just did a hot topic, and you'll see it this week, that they are connecting high iron levels with diabetes. Well, there's a reason, because if you have high iron, that means you have low copper, and with low copper, you have high levels of uric acid. High levels of uric acid has been connected to higher levels of fatty liver, insulin resistance, and diabetes. So all of these things are connected. So copper is needed. And we'll talk about the patches, the LifeWave patches in a minute. Those are based off of GHK copper peptide. How can you have a patch work that's based on copper without copper in your body? It's just one of those, pretty apparent things that we need to realize. Okay, next is accelerated thyroid. So this is the only thyroid supplement that combines 3 formulas in one. We use an Ayurvedic herb called Conchanar, which no one uses, and we use the exact formula that has been around for thousands of years from the master herbalist. We combine that with glandular therapy and then enhance it with scalar frequencies. And this has never been done before. It is bioengineerically, energetically enhanced with scalar frequencies to enhance the general health of the thyroid, neutralize the toxins found in the thyroid like chlorine, fluorine, fluoride, mercury, and other metals, and neutralize the radiation and nuclear fallout. This will also help increase mitochondrial function. And we were just talking about radiation and our smartphones. And the smartphones, did you know that you have to manually turn off 5G on the new phones? So you're getting hit with more radiation than ever. And those little pamphlets with warning signs in your iPhone has not been updated since 1996. I don't know about you, but in 1996, my phone was this big. It was a Motorola. There weren't even iPhones out then. So we're not even being told what we're getting hit with. And when I'm on my phone too long, or if I'm doing too many podcasts in a row, I get headaches and my vision gets blurred because of the radiation. So all of that is hitting our thyroid. Our thyroids attract all of these things. So those would be the top supplements needed. Add in Nuke No More for radiation protection, and of course, accelerated ancient salt, which is full of 62 minerals to help with that intracellular hydration and that phase angle that Heather and I have talked about before. Super important. Improving or increasing exercise, high intensity exercise, like fasting and caloric restriction. High intensity exercise triggers something that leads to an increase in ATP production. Use that wild animal protein like I've talked about, because that is what contains the B vitamins that are absolutely critical for mitochondrial function. You don't get those vitamins in the vegetables, and our soils are so depleted that our vegetables are really not giving us much nutrients anyways. So most vegans are low in their B vitamins. Carnitine, super important to use, and that is found in the animal protein. It's not found in vegetables, guys. It is needed for fat metabolism, and it's imperative for optimal mitochondrial health. It also helps remove accumulative toxic fatty acid metabolites and assists in ridding the toxic compounds out of the mitochondria. Okay, patches. We've only got like 3 minutes left. The X39 patch helps with resetting the genes, over 4,000 genes, to a younger state, which reduces inflammation and increases ATP. It's a no-brainer, right? Our kids, like Heather, you mentioned, kids have more mitochondria and more ATP. So if we're going to age backwards, that X39 is only going to help increase the ATP. And the X49 patch, it's based on a copper peptide as well. AHK copper peptide increases energy and recovery from exercise, increases stamina. So if you're going to have more stamina, you're going to work out more, you're going to do more HIIT training, you're increasing more muscle. All of these things are encouraging increased ATP. And it also has been shown that the X49 helps protect against 5G and radiation, which is going against the ATP. And then Energy Enhancer, which is one of my favorites, increases energy and endurance and reduces fatigue and muscle soreness, helps increase that beta oxidation in the mitochondria for fat burning, and uses an extra 300 calories supposedly per day. That's just a bonus. But it's also just increasing that ATP and mitochondrial health. You can also throw in the glutathione patch because it is protecting the mitochondria from the ROS, and it also is the master antioxidant, as we're so bombarded by oxidative stress. And goodness gracious, that was a lot of information really quick. Heather, you want to add anything more before we go?
You hit on every patch and every supplement. And yeah, I think sometimes things can be overwhelming because we are not in control of what we're being exposed to. But I try to take the approach of being just so grateful that there are certain things that can help mitigate all of this. And so many people don't know about it. So Sarah, I just really want to commend you and thank you for, getting it out there. And the more people that hear about it, the more people, even if they make small, tiny little changes here and there, they're going to notice a difference. So I just,
absolutely. Thank you. And this is not meant to be overwhelming, but it's meant to be things that are options and to stack them. And for instance, this weekend, when I was going through my little blip in the road, I added in more things. Now, as I'm feeling better this week, I don't need to do everything. And so you have to be your own best doctor in assessing how you feel. I use my Genius Insight app on my phone to help scan me and let me know what's going on. I also can use my amp coil scanner to use, and then use the biocharger and some of your tools and the beamer and the patches and the supplements and cleanse my body. Do more intermittent fasting, do more liver flushes, give it a reset. Your body's going to love you. And then you're going to have more energy to do the things you love. So thank you, Heather. We will have your link below for people who want to check out Ascent and all of the amazing technologies that I use on a weekly basis. I don't know what I would do without you. So don't ever move. And so thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If I can help you with your health issues, contact me directly through the website, SARABANTAHEALTH.com. You can also find the beamer, the biocharger, the Genius Insight app, and the amp coil, all of those technologies on the website, all of the supplements we talked about, and a link to the free group coaching. But the link is also below in the description on Telegram. I teach you on a daily basis. There's no reason not to be a part of it. You can ask your questions. I give you tips. You can learn from other people as well. And you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products, across over 100 channels under Accelerated Health TV and radio show. Like I mentioned, my goal is to reach everyone on earth with eyes to see and ears to hear my message of healing. So help me with that goal. Share this with your friends who may need my help. Join us every week, Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific, Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. You can use coupon WELCOME10 for 10% off site-wide at SARABANTAHEALTH.com. Thanks again for joining us here, and have a great week.